Get into the game with Garden Swartz Team Sales. They have everything you need, from screen printing, embroidery, and digital printing services, high school letterman jackets, and all high school and club uniforms, and individual and team apparel with the most reliable brands like Speedline, Rollins, and Wilson. And don't forget to check out the latest F7 Shut helmet. It's all at Garden Swartz Team Sales. Give them a call, 505-884-1234. Garden Swartz Team Sales.
Dreamstyle Remodeling has been wowing homeowners in New Mexico since 1989. Selected as Best Custom Home Remodeler for 3 consecutive years by readers of the Albuquerque Journal, we're also your exclusive provider for top home improvement brands like Renewal by Anderson, Four Seasons, Blaze King, and many others. Founded and headquartered in Albuquerque, Dreamstyle Remodeling is family-owned and now employs more than 500 people across the southwestern U.S. In fact, we've helped more than 60,000 homeowners improve their home in New Mexico, Arizona, California, Idaho, and West Texas. We're committed to providing a superior customer experience. We've earned 4.6 stars with hundreds of online reviews and have an A+ with the BBB. Dreamstyle Remodeling is a proud supporter of UNM Athletics. Visit our beautiful 10,000 square foot showroom at 1460 Renaissance Boulevard across from Sam's Club, or dreamstyleremodeling.com to make your home remodeling dreams come true.
Car Crafters, proud supporter of ProView Sports Network.
Are you sure we're supposed to be doing this?
Don't worry, I've watched him do it 1,000 times. Come on, what's the worst that can happen?
No! Bad dog!
Hi, welcome to Car Crafters. What happened? Don't worry, we'll make it like it never happened.
Car Crafters, it's like it never happened.
The Sports Desk is proudly presented by Car Crafters. It's like it never happened.
Good morning and welcome to Sports Desk live on Comcast Channel 26, also streamed on Facebook. I'm your host, Ed Nunez. With us is our special guest today. He's the high school prep sports editor of the Albuquerque Journal, Mr. James Yotis. James, thanks so much for being here.
Good to see you.
Yeah, you know, we just talked a little bit, and I read your articles over the weekend. I've been in Silver City so much covering Western that, you know, I'm kind of blinded a little bit by high school, although I do follow what you read religiously. Every weekend, every Sunday, I read, you know, I got to read. I'm an avid reader anyway. And there's a lot of, you know, the brackets came out on Sunday.
Right.
You had some real good opinions as far as what you think might happen. You mentioned to me, too, that this year, you and Ken Sickinger of the Albuquerque Journal, who always go head-to-head in picks, it might have been your most off year, you said. And, you know, I don't know, picking is, you know.
Yeah, Ken got me this year. He beat me by a game. The Clovis-La Cueva game was the tiebreaker. So that late touchdown by Clovis the other night to beat La Cueva, that was the one that gave him the win for the year. So I got to give him props. It hurts me to lose since I'm the active preps editor, and it's a little painful. And I owe him lunch on top of that. So all props to Ken. He beat me this year. I've won about 3 or 4 years in a row. So maybe I was due to have a little bit of an off year.
You called that an epic game. We're going to get to some highlights there too, and you know, you don't use that term lightly because you've seen many epic games throughout your career as a Albuquerque Journal sports writer. You've seen a million games. So I read about it, I heard about it, and sounds like Clovis, and we'll get to the highlights here in a second, I think is really peaking somewhat at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, look at what happened. They get a 2 seed, which is their highest, probably since we've been seeding the teams 1 through 12. I'd have to go back and double check, and I'm going to do that this week. I don't think Clovis has been seeded higher than number 2.
Here's some highlights here.
Yeah. Early big play there for La Cueva. But I don't think Clovis has been seeded higher than number 2 in any bracket since we started numbering the teams. So this win will tell you everything about how the NMAA was going to seed the winner of this game. Because look at what happened to La Cueva. They dropped all the way down to 7. Here's the touchdown catch to Connor O'Toole.
Oh, back corner. Wow.
Yeah, fade route to Connor there, making his return after a few weeks with a broken foot. So it was really good to see him back. That was the first of the 2 touchdown catches that
nice play
that Connor had.
Very
yeah,
nice
and then a 2-point pass there to Tyler Jensen. I believe here's the other one to Connor, who makes a catch around the 20, I believe, and then kind of pulls away. Look, he's so big and physical, you know. Plus, he has the sprinter's speed. So, what a combination!
Looks like he's just fine with that play.
Yeah, they didn't target him very much in this game, which surprised me a bit. But when they did go to him, as always, Connor found a way to deliver. This was a huge play here. Justin Webskowski from Clovis busting off an 80-yard run right after LaCueva took the lead on that Connor O'Toole touchdown. This was about 20 seconds later, and Clovis came back and tied the game on one play. That was a tremendous, tremendous run.
Chance Harris came back from his ankle injury.
Yeah, and here's Webskowski's second touchdown, which put them ahead. You know, and this was under 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and the final 4 minutes of this game was crazy. You know, and here's the two-point conversion after LaCueva scored to cut it to 1. That was a little bit of a controversial call. You could see the official make an initial incomplete pass before he ruled it a 2-point, and then this great throw by Chance Harris, yeah, to Malik Phillips
6
for the
seconds left.
touchdown. Yeah, I think it was 5.8 on the scoreboard clock, but my gosh, you saw the throw. I mean, how much air was under that ball? And the kid told me, Chance Harris told me after the game, I just threw it up, and he counted on his kid to be there, which is a pretty bold thing to say in a game of this magnitude. But there you go, Clovis' district championship. What a tremendous game. It was the best game I covered start to finish all year. You know, I had the Centennial Rio Rancho game in week 1, which is probably the craziest game I covered, but in terms of quality of football and storyline changes and momentum changes, that game, the Clovis-LaCueva game, was probably the best one I did all year. It was certainly the best one I did all year.
Coach Fullerton, you know, they again, Chance Harris came back. Jaden Phillips had 2 touchdown receptions. Harrison been out since late September with an ankle injury. And then you mentioned Connor O'Toole coming back for LaCueva. So that game, I think, had it all. Drama, the last second heroics by Clovis. And, you know, one of the things that was interesting to me is you thought, and it was in the paper, Clovis might be projected to meet Volcano Vista for the title. It seems like Clovis, as I mentioned, is peaking at the right time.
Yeah, and they're looking at another game with LaCueva. If LaCueva wins its first-round game with El Dorado this week, LaCueva is going to go back down and play Clovis again. And of course, we should mention, too, Brandon Back, the LaCueva coach, had to sit out this last game.
That's right.
And there were some points in this game where I thought he was missed, where there was some game management that I think might have gone differently if Brandon had been there. So Brandon will be back for the rematch. And, you know, but I tell you, the last 2 times these teams have played, it's been tremendous. It was a 10-7 game in Clovis last year, and then, of course, 35-30 here just last weekend. So these 2 teams are clearly extremely well matched. And, boy, unfortunately, I wouldn't get a chance to go down for that rematch if it comes to that, if LaCueva takes care of business and beats El Dorado in the first round on Friday night. They'll go to Clovis for the quarterfinals. But this is as good a Clovis team as I've seen in a long time, and I've been watching these teams, you know, for 30 plus years. Tremendous skill athletes, big physical kids. Webskowski, we talked about Malik Phillips, who caught the game-winning touchdown. Jaden Phillips, who hardly ever gets in on offense, I was told after the game by Chance Harris. He's primarily a defensive guy. He catches 2 touchdowns in this game, and he, from what Chance Harris told me, the quarterback, he doesn't get in on offense that much anymore. So here's a kid, who comes up with 2, and he's a big physical specimen, about 250, 6'2", 250, makes 2 touchdown grabs in the first quarter of that game. Chance Harris is just a junior. Webskowski is a junior. There's some underclassmen on this team that teams are going to have to deal with next year too. Forget about this year when they're a number 2 seed. Maybe you could argue their 3 best skill position kids are all going to be back in 2020. So I'm very excited to see what Clovis could do, and the way the brackets came out. Volcano Vista on the top half, Clovis on the bottom half. That's what, if it goes according to seed, that's what we'll get on November 30th.
What a clash that might be, but I'll tell you, you make a lot of great points. And Clovis, you remember when Coach Roanhouse was there? Yeah. Coach Fullerton has done a wonderful job there. So yeah, they're playing really well at a good time here. Let's go to Cleveland Rio Rancho highlights and a game won by the Storm, 35-20. And Jeff Davison, the quarterback, came back. He returned for Cleveland. It's the 5th straight win for the Storm on the Rams' home field.
Yeah, that's a crazy stat. I mean, I think it's since 2009 that Rio Rancho's actually beaten Cleveland in its home stadium. But, you know, Rio Rancho's had a lot of success in Cleveland Stadium as well over the years. They didn't come up this year because the game was at Rio Rancho. But I tell you what, getting Jeff Davison back, shoulder injury, separated shoulder, suffered about a month ago, comes back, and you can see just on some of these highlights, what a difference he makes for this offense. I think back to when Cleveland played Volcano Vista. Trey Ortega was their backup quarterback. They struggled. With Jeff Davison, Jeff knows this offense. He's a great runner, terrific thrower. He knows this offense. He has a great chemistry with his receivers. And what does that do? That opens things up for young Mr. Dorian Lewis, as we see here. When Jeff Davison is going well, that opens things up for Dorian. Look at the way he runs. I mean,
150 yards on Friday.
So his numbers almost certainly reflect the return of Jeff Davison to this offense, even though I didn't see this game personally. But you could tell right away that this offense is going to be totally different now that we go into the playoffs with a healthy Jeff Davison. Everybody benefits. Trey Watson is back. They've got Trayvon Denard. Now Dorian figures to benefit greatly from Jeff Davison's return. So Cleveland's going to be one, and they're a 3 seed. So they're going to be really interesting to watch now over the next couple of weeks.
You mentioned this earlier in the season after Cleveland lost to Volcano Vista. You did mention that in your article that look out, though, that game was 28-7, and at the half there was no more scoring in the second half. But you thought that when Jeff Davison, and he did come back, that if he came back, if they do play again, the rematch would be a lot different.
Yeah, and I wrote a column the next day after the Cleveland Volcano Vista game, basically saying, look, let's not read too much into this. Cleveland was missing arguably its most important piece. Dorian Lewis is their best offensive player, but their most important piece is Jeff Davison. They're missing him. They're just going to look different. So Volcano Vista was the best team that day. I think they would have beaten Cleveland with or without Jeff Davison. But let's face facts. They're just a much different offense with Jeff than without. And if they get around to playing Volcano at some point, which could only come in the finals now because Cleveland's on the opposite side of the bracket where Clovis is, who knows what might happen. But this Cleveland offense is so much more dynamic now with Jeff, and they're going to be, and we're looking at maybe a potential, Cleveland Centennial game in the quarterfinals. That's how it would go according to seed. I think that's probably what we'll get. Interesting matchup, but I like Cleveland's chances to get at least to the semis.
Tell you what, there's some interesting matchups coming up, period. You mentioned some other things, too, and I wanted to talk about El Dorado and La Cueva, and you mentioned this, and I read everything that you wrote. La Cueva did win a month ago, but you mentioned that game was 21-13 with 10 minutes to go.
Not only that, the total yardage in that game, and I made a mention of it when I wrote down my top games to watch for next week in the playoffs. I had that one at the top of the list. When I went back and looked at the stats from that game, there was only 7 yards difference in total offense between La Cueva and El Dorado in that game. They were almost identical in passing, almost identical in rushing, just a couple of yards difference in both areas. El Dorado played very well, and it was 21-13 with 10 minutes left. And then there was a field goal, and then La Cueva got the big touchdown from Tyler Jensen, I believe, that kind of put it away. And then there was a late pick 6, which was cosmetic. So it becomes a 38-13 final score. But that game was, anybody who was there knows that game was much, much closer than the score would indicate.
So that could be an interesting game for Friday night. Now, all signs say that La Cueva should take care of business. That's a rivalry game, though, and I'm sure El Dorado head coach Charlie Dotson is going to have them ready as he always does.
Yeah, and Charlie is such a great strategizer, if for lack of a better term. He knows how to create new wrinkles when you play a team more than once in a regular season or a playoff format. So, I'm sure he'll have something new, a couple of new wrinkles for La Cueva that they didn't see the first time. I don't know what those will be yet. And Charlie is notoriously a misdirection kind of coach. What he tells you is not always what he's going to do, and he's very smart that way. But having said that, La Cueva's talent's just better. They've got Connor O'Toole back in the fold now, who they did not have in the first game. Tyler Jensen, who made his return in the first El Dorado game,
has cancer, by the way, right?
Yeah, from cancer and a broken foot.
What an amazing story there.
Yeah. So they're going to have 2 skilled kids at full boil for the rematch. So it's hard not to like La Cueva, but as you said, in rivalry games, man, you never know how these things might turn. There's just that secret ingredient. You're a Highland guy, so
right.
I mean, you know how this is. In games where they play Albuquerque High or
San Diego,
or San Diego,
big
right.
rival. Yeah,
you just never can truly predict how a rivalry game will go. Even if La Cueva won the first game by 25 points, no guarantee. La Cueva, this is not the same La Cueva team as last year. It's a very good group. Defenses, and I've said this all along, the La Cueva defense is about 75-80% of what it was last year when it was unbelievably good. This defense is good. It's not great. Austin Smith, their quarterback, has had a great season. he's been so valuable for them. Probably their most important player, I would say, on the offensive side of the ball. And they've got great receivers, but they've struggled to run the ball most of the year. Even with Tyler Jensen back, they've run the ball much better, but they still are not a great running team, I would say. So there are enough elements in this game to perhaps lead to a fairly competitive game into the fourth quarter, just like the first time.
The other wide receiver for La Cueva, Ryan Thomas, or what's his?
Brad Thomas.
Brad Thomas.
Right.
And I think when I saw him play earlier in the year, the way this kid sets his routes up, he's a great route runner and unbelievably triple jump champion, is it right?
Yeah.
Incredible athlete.
Brandon Back was talking to me about Brad Thomas going all the way back to like March and April. I covered a lot of track and field, and I was, watching Brad Thomas through the whole spring as a triple jumper and just watching him progress from meet to meet, where his marks just kept going up and up. And I was talking to Brandon about that. He said, just wait to see what this guy does on the football field. And Brad's just a junior as well, so he's an incredibly physical, big, athletic receiver. He'll be their Connor O'Toole next year.
Yes.
But even back to the spring, Brandon told me he was going to be a very valuable piece of this offense, and he has been every bit of that. When Connor was out, even when Connor was in the lineup before he got injured, Brad Thomas was a kid that they were targeting frequently. Big receiving, not just a big receiving target, good possession receiver. You mentioned the route running. Great hands, can go up and make a catch on balls that are not quite on target, can adjust. Great body adjustment in the air, on the ground. So you put all those things together with his natural athleticism, tremendous receiver.
I was very impressed, and I'll tell you, between him and Connor O'Toole, I think you said this even in our preseason predictions. You mentioned that. Good luck with guarding either one of them because they're both so athletic and good. We'll take a break, and we'll break down the brackets. We'll bring up the brackets on the sports desk after these messages.
Chavez on a play action, and he's going to go for it deep down the far sideline, and he's got what? Down from the 16 handoff is Dorian, and he's in. Touchdown. The
looking for the trick play right off the bat, and it might work. Up and down the sideline. There's no red anywhere to be found. Touchdown, Eagles. Fly, baby, fly on the opening play. He's dropping. He's looking. He's going to throw it deep. Connor O'Toole's out there. Ball is caught at the 10, the 5. Connor O'Toole, second touchdown on the night. Looking towards Jackson. Jackson one-on-one. Kevin brings it in. Wow. Touchdown, Sandia. man was that a good throw and a fantastic catch by the receiver.
Not too confident. Here's the handoff. Dorian's got all the room. Dorian a cut to the outside, and he's going to go to the 5, diving in. Is he there?
They're going to throw it. Looking, throws it in the end zone. Ball is caught. Touchdown, Clovis Wildcats. Goodness, what a play.
What is glamour? Frailty. What is desire? Diamonds. They say a life lived without passion is hardly worth living.
Ma'am? 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 Dang, this one made me feel all special.
To win the race, I can't even explain how, in fact, I'm getting goosebumps right now talking about it. No matter where you go, you're an Indy 500 winner. The only way to be successful in racing is to stay on top of the technical edge, and we've done that with our dealership. So a lot of the technology in our service department and sales processes, everything is the very latest. That gives you an edge. That's being competitive in the car business. You can take it any way you want, but that's the truth.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walk up to the cashier, order up a root beer and a #1. Cover it with green stuff, one scoop is not enough. Find a booth is real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot, it's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of ProView Sports Network.
Is this my car?
State Farm knows that for every one of those moments,
This is ridiculous!
there's one of these.
Is this my car? What? This is ridiculous.
This can't be happening!
This can't be happening.
Oh, it's happening, sweetheart.
Oh, it's happening, sweetheart.
Shut up.
Shut up!
That's why State Farm is there, with car insurance for when things go wrong, but also here with car loans to help life go right. State Farm.
Talk to State Farm agent Marty Size or Michelle Rudolph in Albuquerque today.
Good morning. Welcome back to the Sports Desk, live on Comcast Channel 26, also streamed on Facebook. I'm your host, Ed Nunez. With us is the prep editor of the Albuquerque Journal, James Yotis. And James, we went over a couple of things in the first segment. We've got one more highlight from Friday night. Sandia El Dorado and our producer, Alden Iwani, who does such a great job, will get it up for us.
All right, here we go. Yeah, you know, this was a big game for both these teams. Sandia had to have it to sort of clinch its playoff berth, but then they got some help the next day with Carlsbad beating Hobbs. El Dorado needed to have this win to cement, their playoff berth as well. That was a big early touchdown pass there for the Eagles. And they were in control most of the way. Here, this touchdown here we're going to see from Sandia to Kevin Jackson. From quarterback Junior Silva, came right at the end of the first half. You can see the clock there. This came after a turnover by El Dorado and changed the momentum of the game. Instead of El Dorado being up 14-0, it was 14-7, and made things a little tense for El Dorado. But El Dorado's running game was really solid between Elijah Goree and Connor Baca. Those two in particular. The El Dorado O-line was just too much for Sandia. Sandia struggled against the run most of the year, and that was the case again, here in this game.
You said you weren't quite sure about the status of El Dorado quarterback Zach Hoffman.
Yeah, Zach Hoffman, who's been playing quarterback the last couple of weeks, he was on a single crutch in the second half of this game with his right ankle, I believe, is what Charlie Dotson told me. So I think it was more precautionary than anything else, but I need to touch base with Charlie this week ahead of their game with LaCueva and figure out how they're going to do it. You know, they've got Elias Franco, their sophomore, who's been playing quarterback a good chunk of the year. And they had another quarterback, Nick Petty, play at the end of the game, although that was sort of a pregame plan anyway. But Zach Hoffman brings a great deal of athleticism to the position. Terrific runner, not a great passing quarterback. Actually, none of Eldorado's quarterbacks are terribly great throwers. And Charlie's been so spoiled. He's had nothing but great quarterbacks this whole decade, up to and including Zach Gentry. This happens to be one of those years where he hasn't had really an alpha quarterback at the position, and he's had to sort of do it piecemeal and by patchwork and try and get through the season as best he could. So we'll have to see whether Zach plays. But if he doesn't play, that's certainly going to hinder, I think, Eldorado on Friday.
Yeah, as you mentioned, he brings so much to that position. I would think it would. You know, there's a couple other matches. We'll get the brackets here in a minute. But you got Sandia and Las Cruces, and Cibola goes to number 6, Centennial. Now, Cibola was a team that interested me earlier in the season. Elijah Spalding, Mikey Garcia, Slade Campos. They've got some playmakers. Alden Chavez, the freshman quarterback, started out like gangbusters. I mean, he broke records in that first game against Sandia.
Yeah, I think he threw 5 or 6 scores that first week and came out of the blue. None of us really were aware of this kid. Rod Williams kept it pretty close to the vest. Didn't talk much about Aiden before the season began, and then he just started like gangbusters. But he's been out about a month now. And Ken Sickinger asked him the other day after the Volcano Vista Cibola game whether he'd be back for the Centennial game, and he said questionable. You know, they've been trying to manage without him. And you mentioned they've got some good playmakers. Mikey Garcia is one of the best athletes in 6A that nobody talks about. One of the best
player. You mentioned
one
that
of the best players in the
started,
state.
right? Yeah.
One of the best players in the state, no question. He hasn't got as much run, maybe because Cibola's been sort of a 500 team this year. Mikey's a tremendous athlete. Slade Campos has been a pretty efficient running back for them. Going under the radar. I mean, he's not one of the 3 or 4 best running backs in the city or in the metro area, but he's very effective and he gets the job done. He gets into the end zone. So you're right. They do have some, and you mentioned the Spalding kid too. They do have some other weapons on this team, but without Aiden, I don't know how this is going to pan out for them on Saturday when they play Centennial.
If you remember, and you do remember, you wrote the story that Cibola won their opening playoff game last year, had a decent run, but this one here, this sounds a little bit different just because of the uncertainty at the quarterback position. Stevie Barella had played quarterback as well for Cibola, but in Aiden Chavez, this kid is going to be really something special in the years ahead. He's going to develop. He'll get stronger. He'll get bigger. And it's hard to believe that a true freshman played as well as he did, James. I don't know that we see that a lot.
I said that right at the start of the season. You just do not see coaches at this level of New Mexico football entrust their offenses to true freshmen. Well, I shouldn't say true freshmen. There's no such thing as a redshirt freshman, but you just don't see them turn over their offenses to a freshman. It just does not happen. You see this at smaller schools where they sort of have to do this, but for a 6A school to turn their offense over to a freshman, and Cibola's a pretty solid program, so that speaks volumes for how much this kid is bringing to the table. And it's been a very effective offense for Cibola. Their short passing game is very much like an extended running game. Aiden does not make a ton of throws down the field. Usually when he does, it's to Mikey Garcia. But their passing game is very controlled. A lot of very short and intermediate routes, high percentage throws. Don't put too much on the freshman's shoulders. Allow him to make simple throws and just move the chains. And it's been super effective for them all year.
That's a good way to put it because they love the middle screens. They love the bubble screens. You're right. It's very controlled. And early on in the season, a lot of that was working. But then I noticed this, I covered Cibola the first 3 weeks. I think I had them 3 times in a row. Then I noticed that teams were starting to pick up on that. LaCueva, had played them at Community, and of course LaCueva probably has more talent. But they started waiting for that middle screen, that bubble screen. They started reading a lot of that stuff. But I think that's a good way to describe it, a controlled offense, and so he doesn't make too many mistakes. But this kid going forward is just going to be unbelievable. Yeah. Sandia, Las Cruces. Now, I was going to ask you, Chad Adcox, the former Monzano coach, sat out a year, came back to Sandia. How's he done in his first year? You always give grades out. You give grades out, and
I didn't see them being more. And there's the bracket there. I didn't see them being more than 5-5 this year anyway. They were 3-7 in a tough district. First year head coaches, if they come from within the same program, that's one thing where the transition is smoother. If they come from outside the program and have a complete 180 from the previous coach, Kevin Barker, and that was the case here for Chad Adcox. Philosophically, he just does things differently than Kevin did. He runs different schemes offensively, defensively. He's just a different personality than Kevin. It's not better, it's not worse, it's just different.
Right.
So I sort of expected Sandy to have some growing pains this first year, and that was the case. They were competitive in spurts. You know, they played 2 good quarters here and there, like they did against Centennial when Centennial was here a few weeks ago. They have not been able to sustain it for 4 quarters. That's really been their issue. LaShawn Joseph,
amazing season,
who's been tremendous for them. You know, it's too bad because his season's getting lost a little bit, you know, in the shuffle here. But he has been a tremendous player for them, and he's been a joy to cover. He's fun to watch. He's big. He's physical. He can move. He's one of the best running backs in 6A. I'd say one of the 2 or 3 best.
Yeah.
And if he was playing behind maybe a stronger offensive line, who knows what kind of numbers he might have put up otherwise.
And that says a lot because he did pretty well without that. I mean, the kid, once he gets in the open field, forget it. Let's go over some of these matchups in the round 1. And one thing that intrigued me, and you wrote about this in the paper as well, Mayfield and Carlsbad, the Bradley brothers, Gary of Carlsbad and Mike Bradley of Mayfield. So what talk about that matchup a little bit because wow, I mean you're talking about football lineage there.
And the reason this game is going to be in Las Cruces instead of Carlsbad was because Mayfield beat them 27-14 in the regular season. Otherwise, their position in the district standings would have been flipped, and this would have been Mayfield playing at Carlsbad instead. So Mayfield gets the home game. That'll be a Saturday night game, which will be a rare thing. But you have Cruces, Centennial, and Mayfield all playing at the Field of Dreams this weekend, so they had to have a pecking order. So Mayfield and Carlsbad will be the last of the 6A games this weekend. You know, Mayfield has been an effective team. As I wrote the other day, they are not flashy. They're just a plodding team with great defense. They're not flashy at all. They've upgraded their offense from where they were last year, which was a hindrance when they lost to Cibola in the first round, 14-7. When Cibola was a 12 and Mayfield was a 5 seed, and they kind of flamed out. They tried to upgrade their offense. They hired Henry Carrillo, the former Silver High coach, brought him in to run the offense. It's been more effective. It's still not a dynamic offense, but their system is effective. Coach Mike Bradley's been doing what he can with this team, and defensively, this team is still very stout. So it'll be interesting to see how this matchup shakes out because Carlsbad's been periodically a very explosive team this year. So I'm really interested to see how Carlsbad adjusts to the first game when they only put up 14 and see what they're able to do with their quarterback, Caden Smith, and see how they're able to open things up a bit, if possible, against Mayfield.
I covered them against the Trisco Heritage at Community Stadium a couple months ago, and that's probably, Trisco Heritage has had their lumps this year, but I was impressed with some of the playmakers that Carlsbad, including Caden Smith. I was impressed with some of the speed, but then I was talking to some of the Carlsbad people themselves, and they're saying, hey, we're good, but there's some better teams in this class than us. So
and Carlsbad got knocked out of the playoffs last year by Cibola. They were pretty upset by that. They thought they should have been the 12th seed. And
I remember that.
And Cibola got the 12, and I know Coach Gary Bradley wrote me a very lengthy email after the brackets came out, complaining about the process and saying, hey, look, this is what we've done versus what Cibola's done. He was not very happy to get left out this year. So I know Carlsbad's kids, the ones that are back from last year, are pretty anxious to get into the playoffs and try and make some noise.
Talk about the Cibola. Cibola's got to go on the road to Centennial, and that's a tall order for the Cougars.
Yeah, we were talking about Aiden Chavez a minute ago. Centennial's quarterback, Aiden Trujillo, along with Isaiah Chavez from Rio Rancho, probably the second best running quarterback in 6A. He's very skilled. He's got a tremendous running back with Gabriel Acosta, and Darren Rodriguez, their top receiver, is really a tremendous athlete. Another one of those kids we don't talk a lot about up here, but they've got 3 pretty good alpha kids on that offense, and they've been pretty solid all year. They had that one game against Las Cruces where they played very poorly, and they lost 35-18, which is the reason they didn't win the district. This is a tough matchup for Cibola, my alma mater. I'd love to say they'd have a decent chance to get into the quarters for the second straight year, but I don't see that this year. Centennial's a much stronger team than the Mayfield team Cibola played last year.
And then the uncertainty at the quarterback position, as you mentioned, with Chavez
tough.
for Cibola.
Even if Aiden comes back, this is still a very tough matchup for Cibola.
I think one of the things, too, is that going back to Sandia and Las Cruces and then Carlsbad and Mayfield, the second round matchup you mentioned that could put Las Cruces in line for a matchup against Rio Rancho. And that game there, the Rio Rancho went down in September at the Field of Dreams and beat Las Cruces 26-21.
And you know what? Rio Rancho forced 5 turnovers in that game. And I know Cruces, I know of all the games Cruces played this year, that was the one that really stuck out to them because they felt like they kind of threw that game away. And frankly, that's the big reason why Las Cruces is on the road or playing in the first weekend and not having a bye week because they lost that game. Otherwise, they would have been 9-1. They would have been probably the 4 seed, Rio Rancho the 5.
Man.
So like I said, you don't want to give them a win over Sandia, but this is a good matchup for Las Cruces. They're very deep. I like this team a lot, actually. They've got 5 or 6 really tremendous athletes on both sides of the ball, including William McGee, a kid I wrote about earlier in the year, Marcus Lopez, Johnny Terrazas, their running back. They've got tremendous athletes on both sides of the ball. It's hard not to like Las Cruces in this game. But yeah, looking ahead, that Rio Rancho, if it gets to Las Cruces and Rio Rancho up here, boy, what a tremendous that matchup that would be, because Cruces, I know, feels like they let that one get away.
I'll tell you what, we're going to. I'm going to ask you a question. I always ask you for your pick, and we'll get to that in a second. But I want to ask you about Volcano Vista. Now, you wrote about Diego Pavia. He was 20 of 32 for 295 on Friday night. Jimmy Gallegos, 111 yards rushing on 12 carries. And you mentioned this a couple weeks ago when Pavia came back, how important he was, just like Davison important to Cleveland. Right. As again, Volcano Vista's defense has been wonderful all year long. But I want to know, what do you think the Hawks, again, they're the number 1 seed, and rightly so. They've had a great, wonderful season. Give us your opinion about the top-seeded Hawks.
Yeah, and I was the only person in August who had this team ranked number 1. Nobody else did.
I remember that. Yeah.
Everybody else had Cleveland or La Cueva. I like the makeup of this team. This is a team with almost 3 dozen seniors. They're big, they're physical, they're speedy, and they've got an unbelievably dynamic quarterback with Diego Pavia, who is now healthy, for the last several weeks. And they've got this running back combination, the best 1-2 combo in the backfield in 6A, with Isaac Chavez, who's their fastest athlete, and he's one of their sprinters on the track team, and Jimmy Gallegos. These 2 kids together, they're just so problematic for defenses. I mean, they're different types of players. Isaac, much more explosive, can produce big plays both in the run game and the pass game, can turn a short swing pass into a 60-yard touchdown at the blink of an eye. Gallegos is a bigger kid, more of a goal line threat, but he is equally capable of busting off big runs as well. And you throw in Ivan Rodriguez, their best receiver, and they've got a couple other good receivers in this offense. They're not, I wouldn't say that their wide receiver depth is great, but they've got kids that can catch the ball and move the chains, and Diego has a tremendously strong arm. So he knows how to deliver to these kids. So there's nothing not to like about Volcano except their kicking game. I think that's the one area, if they get into a close game and they needed a late kick, that would be the one area I would be a little on the fence about. In every other way, Volcano is the best team, and I'm going to stick with them all the way through the playoffs to win it all. I don't see any other team that's capable of hanging with them for 48 minutes.
Now, you said that before we had our preseason predictions, and you did say that back in September.
I'm going to stick with it. I mean, they were 10-0. They beat all the challengers that came up against them. The middle of their schedule was very soft, but they beat La Cueva, they beat Cleveland, they beat Rio Rancho.
I think that was.
And all 3 of those teams are dying for another chance to play Volcano in the playoffs. Rio Rancho probably more than the others, simply because Rio Rancho only lost to them by 8. They had a touchdown callback by penalty. They had another touchdown that they felt they had scored that was ruled a fumble. Rio Rancho feels like they would love to play Volcano again, and they would play in the semifinals if everything goes according to seed. Of course, we'll have to see how that shakes out.
So Cleveland probably wants a shot at them as well.
Oh, yeah, with a healthy Jeff Davison and La Cueva, who lost to Volcano in week 1. Oh, yeah, they felt like they didn't tackle very well that night, and they didn't. Would love to play them again as well.
Boy, there's a lot of people gunning, but first things first, everybody's got to take care of their business
first
before that happens. We'll take a break and come back with the 3A and 4A bracket on the Sports Desk after these messages.
Don't sacrifice quality of flavor when you're in a hurry. Golden Pride offers ribs, fried chicken, green and red chili breakfast burritos, and Frontier Cinnabons. 4 great locations, or visit us online at goldenpride@abq.com. Golden Pride Barbecue Chicken and Ribs, proud supporter of ProView Sports Network.
Folks, there's no other way but to be all in. Either he's Lord of all, or he is not Lord at all. And you can experience the real and authentic, true life change that only God can provide to humanity. See, when we truly encounter Jesus and purpose to know him and follow his teachings, #life change will occur.
The world-famous Laguna Burger is beautifully handcrafted. A burger that's created from certified Angus beef, sinfully cooked to juicy perfection, and garnished with New Mexico's Hatch green chili. Tempt your taste buds with mouth-watering fresh ingredients.
Cut!
We're gonna need another Laguna Burger.
Try the irresistible, world-famous Laguna Burger. Visit thelagunaburger.com. It's fresh with a kick.
Take 32.
Welcome back to the Sports Desk, live on Comcast Channel 26, also streamed on Facebook. I'm your host, Ed Nunez, with our special guest. He's the editor of the high school sports edition for the Albuquerque Journal, James Yotis. James, wow, man, we could probably talk football, and gosh, you know so much, man. Because you cover so much, you cover volleyball, soccer, you got a busy schedule ahead of you, and we talked about that as well. You know, we've got a couple minutes here, and I want to get to the 4A bracket. Our producer, Alden Iowani, will get that up, and he's been doing a great job for us. And James, you know, you mentioned Bloomfield under Bob Alcorn. They played in the championship last year. I covered that game up in Taos. Taos beat them 10-0.
And that was a young team last year that Bloomfield had against Taos. And in fact, Bloomfield scored the only offensive touchdown in that game. Taos scored 2, I believe, special team scores.
One kickoff return to open the
game. And then I think a punt and then a botched punt, I think, too.
Right.
So, you know, Bloomfield lost that game 14-7 and had a bunch of kids back. And they've got this quarterback, Vince Marquez, who's just been killing it this year. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten a chance to see him. I haven't seen him since the playoffs last year, but that's a very dynamic offense. And this air raid thing is something Bob Alcorn, who used to be the coach at Moriarty, went to, he told me, about 3 years ago, got out of his run-oriented philosophy and decided to open up it a bit, and it's paid off tremendously well. And that team has beaten a lot of good teams this year, up and down its schedule. Their district was pretty tough. They beat teams like Aztec, like Kirtland. They beat Hope Christian from 3A earlier in the year. They've got some good wins on their schedule. But having said that, I like this bracket. Portales, I saw Portales earlier in the year against Hope. That is a really good defensive football team. As a matter of fact, what a great matchup that could be if it's 1-2 with that air raid offense from Bloomfield against that really stout defense from Portales. But, you know, there's some other teams that can do some damage in here. Grants is 9-1. Lovington, who just lost to Portales last week in 35-13 in their district championship game. I'm sure Lovington feels like they can play Portales a little closer the next time. I don't see any other team on this bracket, maybe Aztec, that could possibly interrupt the top 4 seeds in this bracket.
So you're champion. Do you want to pick one here?
Portales.
Portales. That's Richard Tripp had the same pick on the selection show. He likes Portales a lot.
I'll take Portales over Bloomfield in the final.
Yeah, that would be a great game if that did happen. We'll have to see. Let's go to the 5A bracket, and this one's interesting too. Roswell's the number 1 seed.
Hey, look at that! Look at that 11 seed there.
You know what? In the Highland Hornets in the playoffs for the first time since 2011, Coach Philip Lovato's done a wonderful job there. They lost to Piedra Vista 46-6 a couple of weeks ago, and it might be a tall, daunting task for Highland to go up there and win. But I'll tell you, I think it's just a victory. Everybody had talked about it. You and I talked about it to start the year. Highland's numbers, Highland this, Highland that. And I've stayed very close to Coach Lovato. I still live in the Highland District. I talked to him quite a bit. I told him the other day, I called him from Silver City. I said, hey, I haven't been around, but I got your back, man. Congratulations. So, you know, let's congratulate the Highland Hornets for even achieving that. Yeah,
total victory for Highland. To get into the playoffs, given as much as they've had to overcome, total victory. This is not a good matchup for them with Piedra Vista, and they're just not equipped athletically to play with teams like this, and there's nothing wrong with that. For this team to have gotten into the playoffs, and look at this, Highland is an 11 seed, Artesia is a 10 seed. If you'd have told me those two were going to be on next to each other in the bracket come November, I really would have laughed anyone out of the room. So all credit to Highland. I don't think it's going to end with a win on Friday night when they go back up to Farmington, but you know what? It doesn't matter. Just for them to have gotten in is a tremendous achievement.
Exactly, and I think one of the things you said about Artesia now, they slid all the way to a 10, and it's been since 2013 since they were seeded so low.
Yeah.
Take on Capital 6-3, but I think just the nature of Artesia, the name, right? The stigma, the championships, the 30 championships, all the things that they've done. But this is not that kind of Artesia team. It doesn't seem to be this year.
Yeah, you know, their loss to Alamogordo the other day was really surprising to a lot of people, including me. I did not see that coming. They've been in a slump ever since district began, and they had 2 really big games leading into district where they scored like 132 points combined leading into their district slate, and then they lost to Roswell, then they fell at home to Goddard, and then they lost to Alamogordo, which was really a surprise. And you can see Alamogordo picked up a 9 seed just ahead of Artesia, so I'm not sure what to make of what's going on with Artesia right now. You don't usually see them this far down in a bracket. It looks unusual. I mean, the optics of it just look bizarre. However, having said that, I probably will still take Artesia in this game and get into a matchup with Los Lunas in the quarterfinals.
Now, Los Lunas has had a wonderful season as well. They, had a couple of hiccups. They went down to Roswell, and Roswell beat them pretty good. And I remember talking to Los Lunas head coach Jeremy Maupin, and he said the game was real close. And at halftime, I believe Roswell scored on a Hail Mary, and things kind of snowballed on the Tigers in the second half.
Yep.
Well, how dangerous is Los Lunas with this Bryce Santana, Tyler Keeney?
They're very.
How dangerous are they?
Very. And, their two losses were to both Roswell schools. Goddard came up here and beat them in September, at the end of September. No, I'm sorry. I take that back. Excuse me. They lost at Clovis. I'm sorry. They beat Goddard when Goddard was up here in September. Los Lunas' other loss was a week 2 game at Clovis, which, frankly, is the number 2 seed.
Right.
6A is not a bad
Understandable.
loss. So, this is going to be, these top 3 in particular, Roswell, Los Lunas, and Goddard, are all capable of winning state. I can't speak to Farmington intelligently because I haven't seen them. They've got the record. They really put it to Piedra Vista in the district championship game last weekend. But I can't speak too much in depth about them. But they are 9-1, and they've got a pretty good draw here. Deming is a pretty solid team. That would be an interesting quarterfinal, as long as a road trip as that might be for Deming if they have to go to Farmington. That could be a potentially interesting game in the quarters.
Now, Diego Casillas, of course, from Belen, no longer with the Eagles. They've struggled a little bit, so you would think that Deming at 5 should take care of that. And Santa Teresa and Alamogordo is a rematch of earlier in the season with Santa Teresa won 14-7.
Frankly, I think all these teams are just, especially the ones in Roswell's quarter, Goddard's quarter, and Los Lunas' quarter. It's hard to see any of these teams taking any of those top 3 out. Like I said, Farmington, I would say, of these top 4 seeds is the one that might be most at jeopardy in the quarterfinals looking ahead. The other 3, even if we had an Artesia Los Lunas quarterfinal, I still would like the top 3 seeds to get in at least to the semis.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, your champion there in 5A.
I have to go with Roswell. They've just been, you know what? And I've said this. I've been saying this since about week 3. They were probably the second best team in the state after Volcano Vista. That might very well be the case. I would love to have seen that team play Clovis. One of the old school Roswell-Clovis matchups. But Roswell might be the second best team in New Mexico behind Volcano Vista. So I'll take Roswell there.
That's saying a lot. And they've been on a roll all year long, and they have players, a lot of players. Jason Nunn's one of their players, one of their better players from last year. So it's going to be an interesting state football playoffs. You're also covering soccer and volleyball and basketball's around the corner.
Yeah, I'm starting my basketball stuff next week. State soccer, the second week of the playoffs starts Wednesday out at the Santa Ana Pueblo complex. So championship games on Friday, so we'll all be busy with that. And then volleyball next week. And like I said, as soon as I get to Monday, I got to start jumping in with basketball, which starts, I think, on December 2nd for a lot of the Albuquerque schools, the Tuesday after the state football games. Excuse me. So, yeah, a lot coming up.
Yeah, we'll bring you back on for your basketball preview as well. James Yotis, high school sports editor for the Albuquerque Journal. Thanks so much for being our guest.
Thanks, good to see you
down the way. We'll be back on the sports desk after these messages.
Dreamstyle Remodeling has been wowing homeowners in New Mexico since 1989. Selected as Best Custom Home Remodeler for 3 consecutive years by readers of the Albuquerque Journal, we're also your exclusive provider for top home improvement brands like Renewal by Anderson, Four Seasons, Blaze King, and many others. Founded and headquartered in Albuquerque, Dreamstyle Remodeling is family-owned and now employs more than 500 people across the southwestern U.S. In fact, we've helped more than 60,000 homeowners improve their home in New Mexico, Arizona, California, Idaho, and West Texas. We're committed to providing a superior customer experience. We've earned 4.6 stars with hundreds of online reviews and have an A+ with the BBB. Dreamstyle Remodeling is a proud supporter of UNM Athletics. Visit our beautiful 10,000 square foot showroom at 1460 Renaissance Boulevard across from Sam's Club or DreamstyleRemodeling.com to make your home remodeling dreams come true.
Car Crafters, proud supporter of ProView Sports Network.
Are you sure we're supposed to be doing this?
Don't worry, I've watched him do it 1,000 times. Come on, what's the worst that can happen?
No! Bad dog! Hi, welcome to Car Crafters. What happened? Don't worry, we'll make it like it never happened.
Car Crafters, it's like it never happened.
The Sports Desk is proudly presented by Car Crafters. It's like it never happened.
Get into the game with Garden Swartz Team Sales. They have everything you need, from screen printing, embroidery, and digital printing services, high school letterman jackets, and all high school and club uniforms, and individual and team apparel with the most reliable brands like Speedline, Rawlins, and Wilson. And don't forget to check out the latest F7 Shut helmet. It's all at Garden Swartz Team Sales. Give them a call, 505-884-1234. Garden Swartz Team Sales.
Welcome back to the Sports Desk, live on Comcast Channel 26, also streamed on Facebook. Got some very special guests with us, and I think sometimes we don't cover enough female athletics, female activities, and we need to do that. And our very special guest is Ernestine Jaramillo, and we'll get into introducing Virginia Lucero here in a second. And Ernestine, a native of New Mexico, received her Bachelor of Arts and Sciences in Education and Marketing from Highlands, and has her Master's Community and Regional Planning at the University of New Mexico School of Architecture and Planning in process. And you've done a lot. There's so many things here. You've emceed. You're also on the Senior Advisory Council. You're also my color person when we do cheer, the state cheer. Is it the state we do?
Metro.
Metro. Okay, so you've done Metro cheer with me, and you're a former Bulldoggie at Albuquerque High and former cheerleader coach there. So and like I said, nobody here at ProView Networks knows anything about cheer, and you've really brought a whole bunch of different angles and how the girls prepare, what it means to be a cheerleader. I think it's a lot of work. I just seeing it at the Metro, it's a whole bunch of work.
Right. Well, just as of 2012 here locally, NMAA has created a different aspect to the Spirit Activities Club. They actually made cheerleading and dance a sport here locally, which really changed the whole dynamic of recognition to the girls and boys who are part of that athletic group, and recognizing that they're a year-round sport, as opposed to, no disrespect to the baseball players, the wrestlers, or the football players, but those are throughout the year, but these are year-round sports.
Well, one of the things I think you and I talked about is they have to be a practice. They have to give up of their time. It's real physical. I saw that, the flips, and I don't think people understand how involved it is. It really is. And it's not as if the cheerleaders, like in baseball, wrestling, they give their time too. They have to make grades. They have certain qualifications, requirements that they have to do.
Right. It's actually even made it. That's why I am so impressed with ProView Networks for acknowledging the cheerleaders for Metro and giving them a little bit of airtime on recognition on that, because those requirements have affected the girls so dramatically, where now it's required that they do 3 competitions throughout the year to qualify for state. So there's been a little bit of pushback too, because now the girls and boys, I'm sorry, because it's a co-ed now, girls and boys are practicing very, very diligently for those intermediate competitions to prepare for state, that they're not necessarily getting opportunities to go to all the games and support all the athletic events on their own.
Let's talk about your history of seeing the Senior Spirit Club. That's what we're here to talk about. So you go ahead and tell us about the history of the Senior Spirit Club.
So with my history just in Albuquerque High as a cheerleader and Bulldoggie, and the last about 27 years of that experience, and in my involvement with the senior centers, I thought of maybe joining the two ideas and created the Senior Spirit Club. I had the idea, and this is one of my biggest cheerleaders, one of my biggest supporters right
There's
here.
Some great pictures right there.
To help support us and recruit. So that's our main goal here today, is to tell everyone a little bit more about the Senior Spirit Club, because there's I think a misconception. The origin that started us was we wanted to perform and support local New Mexicans for the National Senior Games that was hosted by Albuquerque here back in June. So there was a 16-day event, and we only had a month to prepare, so we started practicing about in May. We've gotten the girls together. There's a photo up now of us at a field trip. We prepared for that month long. We did not just dance and cheers, which was actually choreographed and made up by all of us together, not just myself, but some of the girls put their input into it. If not, I think maybe everybody had a little input. And the goal was to perform at the farewell fiestas that the city of Albuquerque hosted. They even sponsored the girls, the city of Albuquerque, and got them some jerseys. They performed on stage at the Al Hurricane Pavilion.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Some more pictures there. Let's introduce one of your Spirit Club, Senior Spirit Club member, Virginia Lucero. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
You've been a part of the program since May 2019, a native New Mexican, Rio Grande High School alumni, supervisor of customer service at various employers like the casino and UNM. Tell us a little bit about your involvement and how you got involved with the Senior Spirit.
With the Senior Spirit, well, it's just, I like to do things. I like to stay busy. I like to do this kind of exercise because it's fun. It's just fun because we keep moving and we keep learning, and we had a great time. It was just a lot of fun. And that's what I do with the seniors.
Look at the big, great video there.
Yeah.
Virginia, did you have any involvement in cheerleading when you were at Rio Grande or in high school or elementary school? Did you have any background?
Not at all. I never thought I would ever be a cheerleader. Was not in my bucket list.
What got you, what got you involved? What made you think, hey, this is going to be something that, and I think it's important for people to see, or because different people, when we get older, people are looking for different things, right?
Yeah,
So
and-
what led you to this?
It's,
Great
when
pictures,
I saw the advertisement of cheerleaders, I'm telling the girls, some of my friends, come on, let's go be cheerleaders. Of course, I was just kidding around. Really, I was kidding around. But they're telling me, cheerleaders, yeah, come on. So I got a few of the girls together, and we went to see what it was about. So when we found out what it was about, it wasn't as hard as we thought it was going to be. So it was moving, it was exercise, it was getting together with the ladies and just talking. It was, that's what we look for. We look for fun. We we look for things to move, things to do.
Honestly, talk about that a little bit, because again, cheerleading is very physical, it's very active, and I'm sure you had to dial some of it back. I'm sure they're participating. And the good thing is, we always say this about seniors, I work for the Department of Senior Affairs, movement, keep active, right?
Yeah.
So what was your goal in starting this program? I'm sure it was along those lines.
Right. So, it seems like a lot of the ladies already enjoy the line dancing, jazzercise,
Right.
or what's the Spanish one?
I'm in a dance group called Los Coloniales de Santa Fe. I do
Two.
that also, just staying moving, dancing.
I'm
having
thinking
fun.
Tai
just
Bo. What's the other one? The old Zumba. That's what we're kind of looking at, like those types of moves.
Yeah.
But I also know that a lot of these ladies, like Virginia had spoke to me about, she's part of another dance troupe where they perform. So they wanted to have that opportunity, not just to come to exercise together, but this type of exercise, it's great for muscle strengthening, cognitive ability, balance too. So we're thinking of all that. And when we integrated the cheer, also what I like to do, we learned a lot of chants or cadences, kind of like what the military do, and that's helping with your breathing also too. And we're just trying to be mindful of all those. So integrating those, the group, the friendship that we have made. It was only supposed to be for the National Senior Games, but we've decided to make it a year-round sport. So we are actively recruiting. We have practice. We're going to start in January every Tuesday at Los Volcanes at the
Senior Center, right?
Ancillary, the Senior Center back gym. It's free to join. We do not charge every Tuesday from 3 to about 5 o'clock, starting in January.
And
So we
January
propose to do.
2020,
Yes.
which
January
is just
2020.
around the corner. It's already
Yes.
November. We got about a minute left. Virginia, tell us how many members are in the group, and what's the funnest thing about cheerleading for you?
For me, let me see, the funnest thing is being together with the group. Being together with the group and just having fun. Learning new steps. Some of us can learn it, some of us take longer to learn it, so then we just teach each other. So that's really just the funnest part of it. And bottom line for me is staying healthy.
And
And
moving
that does
like
it.
this helps you do that.
Absolutely.
Honestly, we got about a minute left. Tell us, again, how many members are in your group right now? How many do you have?
We had a good core of about 20 ladies. On our performance team, we had 13. We have about 3 right now. So we are needing to grow our group significantly. We switched our times and whatnot, so we're actively needing support on that end.
Okay, so that'll say when you're going to start again, Los Volcanes Senior Center in January. What day?
On Tuesdays from 3 o'clock to about 5 o'clock.
Okay, I think that's usually a pretty good time. I've worked at several senior centers, and sometimes after 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, everybody goes home.
Everybody goes
but
home.
I think I worked at Volcanes for. I think they're all. Some means something to me, man. They all do. I'm at Manzano Mesa. Even Volcanes still. Los Volcanes is a very special place to me.
And their gym is pretty phenomenal
fitness center.
too.
It's awesome.
Yes.
Virginia Lucero, Ernestine Jaramillo, thanks so much for being our guest today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we sure
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Ed.
For producer Alden Iwani, I'm Ed Nunez. We'll be back next week on the Sports Desk.
Dreamstyle Remodeling has been wowing homeowners in New Mexico since 1989. Selected as Best Custom Home Remodeler for 3 consecutive years by readers of the Albuquerque Journal, we're also your exclusive provider for top home improvement brands like Renewal by Anderson, Four Seasons, Blaze King, and many others. Founded and headquartered in Albuquerque, Dreamstyle Remodeling is family-owned and now employs more than 500 people across the southwestern U.S. In fact, we've helped more than 60,000 homeowners improve their home in New